introduce Hardy from the BPA. Being initiated with, I think, thanks to Agnes for initiating this one. So this is a sort of, will be a short session. I know many of you just go to the UK Net Zero E later, as do I. But hopefully this is a chance for them to sort of present what their new offering is and how they're going to work with sort of startups and innovators in the built environment sector. So we are going to video it, distribute it across the wider group, both across our 550 companies we work with. We have quite a lot, I imagine, in the built environment, which is very, very relevant. So please do feel with the questions you asked today. Hopefully you won't mind us sharing those with the wider audience and the wider ecosystem. So with that, I'll hand over to you.
Thanks very much, Andrew. Andrew. Thanks everyone for coming, giving us some of your time. Apologies for the slight miscommunication on the agenda, but we're here. This is Julie Bragula, Dr. Julie Bragula, who joined us about 6 months ago. She's our Chief Operating Officer, background was in civil engineering, fire engineering, and spent about 18 years with BRE, looking after testing, certification, etc. and joined us recently. And we are on a bit of a journey over the last 4 years at BBA, which we'll tell you a little bit about, but part of the presentation will be on what we can do for you. So anybody here old enough to remember 1966, the great achievement? There were two great achievements actually. One gentleman can recall the 1966, the last time we won the world, England, not English, I shouldn't assume, won the World Cup. It's also the year that the BBA started, but it doesn't quite get up there with the same headline. In fact, later this week, 2nd of May, is our 58th birthday, so it's been around for a long time. It's called British Board of Agrément. We borrowed it from the French. Not really sure why, it's a long time ago, but BBA is what we've been known as. Chris is here, so it's one of our existing clients is here. I'm just going to run you through a few sort of products that we have dealt with or are dealing with in recent years. Give you a flavour. There's, I just got to send a list of all these innovative products which we're going to put into an innovation hub in some stage on our website. And there's 30, 40 products that you would deem as a bit different to the norm. So just a few more. So this is a company called Sideright, and if you know them, turnover about 50 million. Currently expanding internationally, US, Asia. So they make fire sound insulation products. Very clever product that is an insulation made of rock wool that allows air to flow through for ventilation purposes. And then as soon as the fire starts, it expands and it blocks the air from flowing through. They're very, very clever products, doing really well. Private equity backed. So some strong similarities. The chap who runs that is a chap called Adam Turk. He's also just started in April as the chair of the Construction Product Association. So he's a really, really good guy to have in the innovation space. So there's a company called Indie Nature, being based up in Scotland, backed by Scottish government money and various other ventures. So interestingly, the backers linked certification of their product to the next tranche of funding. So I've had numerous calls with their backers saying, well, we can't say it definitely will be certified, but this is the timeline, this is the process, step route, etc. So some similarities. They use him to make insulation panels. We're seeing a lot of bio-based products coming through at the moment. The next one here is, I think, also part of this group, Biome, interesting company. They don't have a product certified at the moment, but we have done quite a bit of testing and work with them. So this is an insulation panel using a waste material and mushrooms, so mycelium spores binding together as an insulation panel. Outperforms other forms of insulation in some ways, in other areas still got some work to do, but a very, very promising product. So that picture was taken in our library where at work, some samples of our clients, quite a few. And this is in our kitchen, so this product is made from leftover fruit production, so lemon peel, pips, and nut cases and so on. So formed into a plywood, and this of course is a formed plywood, and they make various products about that. Sheep wool insulation, you'll be surprised, maybe a little bit more surprised with this one, called the chimney sheep, for blocking a chimney, using wool. certified by us. So, question is, what exactly do we do? You may have seen our logo. So this is the BBA logo. It's all a little bit old-fashioned at the moment. Maybe at some stage you should go a little bit cooler and go for something a bit more flowing and up to date. But essentially, we certify products and we certify people. We're best known for our product certification. And I'm just going to talk you through a little bit of what that does. So first thing we do is we do testing. So the process is a very lengthy process. So if you want to make a claim to say that this product will last, will be waterproof, will be UV proof, will last for years, let's say 10 years, we can test that. And you'll be pleased to hear this is an accelerated test, but it may still take 2 years to complete the test. So we do a lot of testing. You may well have done some other testing if it was done by a test house that is accredited by UCAS, the UK, or there's a list of other labs that we work with across Europe. And if you've done a test with them, we can use that information. It doesn't have to be done by us, but we also have a test facility, so we can do the testing, and that goes across all ranges. So, now, this is the big difference. A lot of products meet a certain standard, but what if your product doesn't have a standard? What if you brought out something that's so innovative, and there isn't a standard against which you can measure? So standard would say, does it perform X? Yes. Tick, tick, tick. That meets a standard. But if it doesn't have a standard, or sometimes you want to make a claim that is not covered by the standard, we offer what is called a fitness for purpose. So what that means is we will comment on things like the storage of the product, the transportation of the product, if that is relevant to the product, the application, where it's being used, the combination of products within systems, how does it all hang together? So the product in itself may meet a standard, but once you start combining with others, how will it perform? We can't cover all the bases, we can't cover all the combinations, but we do try and cover a broad range that people look at and say, yes, I do find this helpful. So quite often people go to whatever regulation exists, whatever standards exist, they go to NBS, the building standards, they go to the manufacturer's site, they look at the implementation or the installation of the product, the instructions there, the drawings, technical specs. All of the information is very, very helpful, but they often include BBA as a standard source of information at their starting point. Why is it so important? Because it brings a lot of richness to the product. So our certificates are 20 to 30 pages long. There's a cover page and lots and lots of detail behind it. And standards can sometimes be black and white, or regulation, but black is white. This brings a richness to the use of that product in different applications. So as I said, we do it across products, across peoples, but we also cover the factory. So we have teams of people who go to over 70 countries each year. Every 6 months, we go to the factory and say, the quality plan, which dictates how the product is manufactured, the supply chains, the recipe you use, the raw materials you use, is that still as per the original requirement? And are you still highly likely to receive and to produce a product that meets the one that was certified? So there are over 3,000 products certified, and some of our certificates will have multiple products. So if it's a family of products, you may have some between 1 and 10 products attached. So you can see there are many, many thousands of products out there, and that's why BBA is so motivated throughout the we also do people, so there's PAS scheme, publicly accessible schemes. There's competent person schemes, industry schemes that belong to do with installation of the products, and installer schemes. Recently, we found quite a few manufacturers found that they produce a wonderful product, but the installation is critical. When it's not installed properly, it may not have the design effect, or it could have the opposite effect of what was intended. So they've started launching manufacturer schemes. So if you want to install this, you have to be certified by us, and they're not talking to us to manage that certification for them. And then when we do go out to factories, we also do audits of the management systems that they have in place over there. And that's just sort of a labor saving, a time saving benefit to our clients. If we're going to take up a day all the time to come and do the BBA inspection audit, we might as well do this as well. And the two hang together pretty nice. Any questions so far? Or do you keep the questions so far?
Due to instruments, or is it just products and people?
Do we do
Instruments.
technical question?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, so not per se. So you wouldn't come with an instrument per se. However, many products will rely on a bit of data. Maybe your manufacturing process relies on specific instruments to make sure the quality remains or is steady. And so that would form part of any assessment that will form. Yeah. So anything that is part and parcel of how the product does what it does forms part of the certification process, because that is underpinning its performance.
Becky.
Yeah. So no, we wouldn't certify a microscope.
Right.
Yeah. But if you need a microscope of a certain performance to be able to know that your input product is the product that you need to be able to do the. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So if this.
What? Yeah, precision potatoes will certify, but not the actual fence.
No, you could. Yeah.
So why would you call it? So certification is not cheap. There is testing that will cost thousands to tens of thousands, depending on what's involved, the way it's done. And then there's certification. We spend literally hundreds of hours going through various documentation, background, and then come up with a very, very detailed product certificate, as I mentioned earlier. So if you're at a relatively early stage of your growth curve, cash is king. Why would you invest cash? And also, what is the risk when you start the process? If you're going to say, look, I'm going to spend £20,000 on this thing, it's worth it. Is the chance that you will succeed 5%, 50%, or 95%? So these are the questions that are important to people who are still going through the early stages of growth. So I put on 4 points here. The first one is risk management. So post-Grenfell, as you can imagine, we have seen many organizations in construction de-risking as far as possible. If at all possible, they try and pass the risk on to someone else. As far as construction products are concerned, increasingly people are saying it was non-certified. I'm not going to take this. You say it will do this, how do you know it will do what it says on the tin? If you have a credible third party, we're not the only one, we have competition. But if the BBA or equivalent hasn't said, yes, I put my name to this, it will do what the claim is. That is a big difference, and that also dictates your access to the market. Sometimes people say, take a bit of a chance, or sometimes they will just say, I'm not taking a chance. So it's a go, no-go criteria. Is it certified? You play, not you don't. I was with a client recently up in Manchester. They make a wall paneling system, trapped on the floor, fit the paneling system and can be moved. Again, a very innovative product backed by funding from the UAE. And they had a very wily old sales director, been around the block a few times, and he kept logs of all the reasons why he won and he didn't win. And I saw him after sort of 15 months in, and I said, yeah, we sold about £200,000 worth of this product. Good going for another stage. But you also get trapped over the same period of time. The car got lost, and past the reasons why it lost this. And you lost over £1 million worth of sales in that same period because the product wasn't certified, and that's why they came up with the label, and the product is now certified. And the next one is expertise and network. We are not a standalone company. We've been around for many years, so we are engaged with a lot of companies you will engage with. We probably recognize MCS in there, NHPC or Premier, Trustmark. I'm sure quite a few of you would be engaged with. What time to be engaged with? So these are the organizations we form a very strong network with. So we know what their requirements are. And if you will need to meet those requirements, we will probably have a better understanding of that than you may have, depending on where you are then in your development cycle. We also engage with a lot of trade associations. Some trade associations insist on products being certified. So if you go into a roofing product, some kind of membrane or coating on a flat roof, there are two associations. Both insist that your product is certified by BBA or equivalent. So in that sort of market, we would have a 95% market share. If you want to go and talk to someone who has seen every product launched the last 40 years, you go talk to Richard May at BBA because he's been around for 40 years. He's been around quite longer, but he's been with BBA for 40 years. And he will know the market and he will know the product. We also engage with lots of other organizations. This is trade technical assessment organization, Traders World Forum, various universities looking at things like the digitalization of testing. We're currently investing some money in that. Looking way of improving product assessment and performance. We run a number of national highways committees, so although we focus on construction, some of that is in buildings and some of that is in infrastructure. National highways, if you want to use a product on a national highway asset, it has to be certified to 17065. That is requirement in the T's and C's. Doesn't mean that you can't play. So not only do we engage with national highways, but we actually run a number of the committees that form part of the assessment process for national highways. So that was a brief run through in terms of who we are and what we do. It's a very iterative process. This is not a case of you give us a bunch of information. It is an iterative process. You may want to make claims that your competitors don't have. You may want to say this product lasts 20 years. We're going to do the testing and say, we can't justify 20 years, but we can justify 15 years. And you may say, in that case, either I'll go back to the drawing board, so do not 20 years, or I accept 15 years, because my nearest competitor is quoting 10 years or 12 years, so 15 years at this stage is a strong enough differentiate. So that's what I will do. So it's not a black yes or no. There is a level of iteration, there's a level of debate, and there's a level of compromise within this one. But ultimately, we have to feel comfortable that we can substantiate the claims that you want to make with the products market. Are there any questions, comments, complaints?
To deal with circular products and products that have a lifespan and get us repurposed.
Yeah, how many times that? It's a really interesting thing. So we're engaging in some early stage research to see exactly how it works, and we've got a couple of, the interesting thing about it is that the product would have originally been certified to a particular use. It will have then been used, and then basically gets reintroduced into the chain, either as the same product or as a different product. So the standards aren't necessarily distinguishing between those products, because as long as it meets the performance expectation, circular or new, you're okay. But what actually is quite interesting, of course, is the way that you understand what service history the product has had through life, right? Which might then diminish the way that the product might perform going forward with the same function or a different function. So yeah, I mean, really excited about that. And we're sort of doing some early stage trials to sort of say, very good for, when a pipe gets refurbished and becomes another pipe, and that's all right. I think it's the structural components, it's the board materials, it's the stuff that sort of re-enters the circular economy in a slightly different guise post-use.
So we could essentially have two certification for use A and then use B. Like to certify if a repurposed material. What we're looking at is it starts off as one material and then we use it to repurpose as another function.
So theoretically speaking, certification is always linked to its end use.
Yeah.
Yeah, because what it will do is it will basically say, and it's agnostic to how you do that, right? So it's completely agnostic whether you've got an innovation or not. It will just say the performance expectations for this particular function encompasses these particular characteristics. And it will then look at the evidence that you generate to show that it can meet that. So as soon as the product changes its guise, changes its application, the performance expectations will change. And so the assessment might have to be done. What's interesting about circular economy is that say it was a steel beam originally. It came with this particular type of information at the time. I've now taken it out of the building with or without the surface history of what the beam has been through. And then I'm reintroducing it as a beam in a lesser application, or whatever it might be. So it really depends as to how the product re-enters its next stage and what it claims to be able to do.
Okay, thank you.
Probably gathered from Judith's enthusiasm that it's something of personal interest for me and to make the leadership team have had. One of the things we have focused on for the last 4 years is the digitization of everything I do. And traditionally everything's kept in Word document PDF onto the website. And all of that is the process of being digitized. So in future, not only can we make changes much more quickly, but we can also add things in. But So if a change in paragraph affects your certificate, you do it once, it will affect all the relevant pieces. It also means that we can start introducing information that is not by us or generated by us. So EBCs, for example, quality of account like that included in the certificate or a link through to the certificate. So we're looking at various ways in which we can introduce more environmental information, if use that as capture is, into the content we can either generate by ourselves or generate by others and share with us. Or sure.
The expectation is always linked to legal requirement. Yeah, so when you work in a particular part of the sector, we're saying for this particular, the minimum legal requirement for you to play in that space is X. When you want a fire performance, durability, structural stability, there'll be, depending on where you play, there'll be minimum requirements. Anything that's over and above is a voluntary declaration, right? So you could say, actually, I'm really keen to sort of show my environmental credentials. And so again, we're really keen to actually liaise and collaborate with people like yourselves to really understand what would be these additional declarations that actually you believe are a key to a net zero carbon world, but also, how does one measure that, in the absence of there being a steady state expectation? I mean, the really tough thing with any innovation is that to be able to have it assessed, you have to, at some point, compare it to something that does a similar function in a traditional way. And that's okay, but so there is a minimum stuff because the solution itself is agnostic to what it actually you're building. It doesn't really care about how you do it. If you make something out of recycled nappies, that's fine, as long as it performs to what it's expected to do. And so without, it's always a bit where you have to play that game to be able to say, actually, my fire performance is identical to this particular product because the minimum performance is the one that you need to be used in a particular application. And so that particular, so you'll always have this sort of game to do to be able to show equivalence to some extent. Very rarely do you get a zero legal expectation type application in the built environment.
Okay. Do you have any examples where you've got something that doesn't fit in a pitted one that exists already and you're sort of fitness for purpose or your broader story that you can tell around its effectiveness and then it help either helping to gather buyers, sort of in the specification whether you really can't get or you've helped have that new products to get to the point where it can become certified. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I mean, the only thing I would say to think about is no, I have not seen a product that would have not had any sort of benchmarking or anything like that would not have some expectation that exists. And that the mere fact for that is because it is a product used in the built environment for a particular function that we have a building for, we have a surface for. Do you see what I mean? So it's very rare that somebody comes up with an air hood.
I suppose it's like this maybe it's less about his adding them statements, the articulation.
Yeah.
How it does it.
Yeah, exactly right.
Sense.
Yeah.
And context or anything else.
Yeah.
Because I think that's
a better question. Yeah. Absolutely.
A good one. There's nothing. The system says no little bit of it.
Yeah.
It's not going to use.
Absolutely. I think we see lots of examples of that, right? So, for example, and I'm going to use a completely an old example because it shows the same thing. So, before there was lightweight insulation, most of insulation was sort of glues were phenolic based. They're quite these. You can't see it in plywood now. But it used to be a really dark brown coloured glue. And over the years, all of the test standards were written for this particular type of formulation. The creep expectation, everything about it was written for this particular type of chemical formulation, which at the time was what one did with glue. We were hiding timber away from site, so nobody really cared that much about it. So it was all right, really. So it was fine. And then all of a sudden, you see the CLTs of this world now, cross-laminated timbers, you see the plywoods. I saw lots of you guys have this beautiful plywood here all over the place. Again, you can't see any glue lines on that, right? So what you see there, it's a translucent glue, it's a completely different chemical formulation glue, and it's much higher performing than the original glue. But when these guys first came on the market, we're talking decades now, right? But at the time, when these guys came on the market, they couldn't meet one creep test per time. They just couldn't. Because the way they were saying, well, my product is performing similarly well, but it cannot perform to this particular bit because it's written for one specific type of glue, which happened to be this base formula. And so sometimes innovators struggle, right? Because you have to make your way through to show equivalence of performance and then basically enable that step change to happen and for the standards to adjust. And that takes time. So a place like BBA is a very great place to do that with, because there is a bit of bandwidth to basically say, actually, the product performs in exactly the same way. It's fitness for purposes, unaltered by this. And actually, we're going to do a combination of tests. We're going to do a creep test, but we're going to do something in addition to satisfy ourselves that actually does that. And at the start, you might say, listen, you're only going to use it in a non-structural application. Let's try and use it in a thing where the consequence of failure isn't, that a beam comes down or something. So there is ways of getting around that. But I do think, when we talk technology readiness levels, when you get to a certification type round where you're really preparing for mass, you're preparing for volume, your steady state requirement on your R&D is basically towards the end of your process. Because what you're trying to do is you don't try to convince individuals to take your products. What you're really saying is, I want this product out there together with the certificate so people can just pick it up and know it will perform because I've had the checks done. Any earlier than that, you'll start being inefficient, right? Because people have to be happy that actually what they're seeing in your product and how it does it will perform to the expectation that has been set as the minimum expectation requirement. So normally I would recommend that people start thinking about certification, what it means at TRL level 6 to 7. So you start embedding that in and trying to think, what would it look like for mass? What would it look like for volume? And then really start building that into the R&D programmers and start to really understand, not just doing exploratory testing, but really starting to think, if I had to go and sell this as an alternative to what's already there, what would my crowd, what would my consumers want to see and be confident with? So that by the time you hit the higher TRL levels, you're getting a bit more steady state on your production, you're narrowing. That's really when you're then ready to sort of say, right, I'm sort of there, I'm going to do confirmatory work, but I'm not doing R&D work to satisfy people that actually were making. And so that's sort of, because this stuff isn't cheap, but of course it bridges a risk for somebody, right? And so that's why the constancy of your manufacture, the way that it comes out of the factory, that is all taken for granted, if you see what I mean. So that really it's about engaging early so you understand what's required. And we've had a couple of examples, and the examples Harry showed, where really we've been able to help figure out, what would the consumer think about here? What would they want to see? And the world's not cruel to innovation, I wouldn't say that, but it's also, people love a bit of innovation, but only if it's as good as what they're replacing it with. So, and that's something to sort of, the built environment tends to be a conservative gig, really, in that sort of realm. Why that is, I couldn't tell you. I think it's part and parcel of the fact that, just that the receiving crowd is just a bit like just building a house, the fact there are bits and pieces in it, fine, just give me the end product and I'll be all right with the rest. So it's a little bit of that work I think that's really valuable to do earlier on and keep it in mind.
It isn't. Oh,
so key question from me. So it brought up a few examples of companies that have got through that process, so like innovator, trial, etc. I'm wondering, is there any common theme that emerges from companies, specifically startup stage, SME stage, any common wisdom or challenges of how can these cash startup companies prepare well enough in advance for that next step?
Yeah, happy to take that. I mean, some of my previous comments sort of refer, I think. So, I mean, my biggest advice would be start thinking about certification as you sort of, 6 and, when you're sort of starting to see, actually, I think I've got product here. think I can make this. Yes, I have a bit of work to do with my supply chain partners. I'm thinking about who's going to be the right person for us. I'm going to do a couple of changes, but actually your changes, like this graph where you sort of innovate and it goes up and down, and then the wiggles start getting a little bit less. And as you sort of just get the line, your product is really steady state. That's really a certification type activity towards the end. But as your wiggles start getting a bit less, that's when you start need to talk to somebody about it and so say, actually, I'm having an alternative installation product. What do the industry will look to me to prove? I think what it then does is, it sort of doesn't disappoint, because I do think when people come a bit too early, I think they're really, it's hard, right? Because you need to get the money ready, you're still in trial phase, and then come people like, yeah, but how does that work then? Well, if this is the case, then how do you prove that? Sometimes it's just a bit too early. Having said that, knowing this will help you to get ready later on, right? Because you'll know what's going to come your way. You might have partnerships with universities. If they know what you're trying to aim for, that's going to help them as well, right? Because they're going to say, oh, actually, I can include a couple of measurements for you on this, so that you have got a sense of whether the product does something similar. So early engagement, to understand what's required, get the right partners on board, I think. Pure research is one thing, but applied research is really important. And there are some really key partners out there to do that with, and that we work with as well. And then the next thing is also look for the biggies, right? Everything will be new, not everything will be out there. So what are those key 3 things that make the difference in this particular product? And then really hone in on that, so that you don't hemorrhage money on stuff, And again, if it means you close out a couple of applications initially to build up a bit of steam, do that. Don't try to be everything to everybody. Just say, listen, I'm going to do take another structural example. Once you do something that's load bearing, tough gig, safety expectation requirement, design information you need. Try non-load bearing application first. Easier to get into, easier to get volume started, get a bit of money in. Just a lower hurdle to get started. So just be strategic around not trying to be everything to everybody, and then try and build up experience and expertise throughout. If you don't have a manufacturing facility, don't even bother doing this. Because the whole purpose of certification is that you certify at the start, and you have a factory and you have a process that shows that the product, as you've tested it, remains to be the product that exits your factory gate. If you haven't got any of that pinned down, that's a waste of time. Having said that, the assessment criteria stay the same, so you can engage early on that. But I think you don't want to ask for a certification, you want to ask for an innovative support program, a bit different to maybe what some people come that have really established products that produce in volume.
I'm sure you've heard the story of 2 chaps walking through the bush in Africa, coming across a line and looks quite hungry. One person takes a pair of Nikes out of his backpack and puts them on, and the other person says, you can't outrun a lion. He says, I don't need to, I just need to outrun you. So just look at what the differentiator is that's going to keep you ahead of the pack. Some of these products we shared today, I'll tell you which one, wanted to be 100% natural from the word go, and in the end we convinced them that 95% natural would be great, and then you can work on the other 5%, but get the product in the market, start building a brand, start generating some income, and the rest of it. I think there's another question back there.
Actually, you had covered. I was wondering what you see from the earlier stage is actually you totally know it was done. Don't bother pre-TRL6 or anything about idea completion.
Julie, you mentioned the kind of the misalignment with existing standards and so on. Clearly the testing and approvals that you're doing can support the evidence for revision of standards as well.
Yeah.
How do you see that feedback loop working
Very
well
good.
as you play in that?
Excellent question. Yeah, so I think again, and Hardy had sort of a slide on networks. Absolutely. I mean, we're part of standardization work. We're sort of really, for a very small organization, we're really keen to network in so that actually our clients can benefit from the knowledge, because things change. So you really want to know, like there's change in the standard, change in the test method. Again, I'm not going to spill any beans on that, but you'd be amazed. Every 3 years we've got on a go with this. So 3 to 5 years you review standards, and that's sort of something to be. So normally what we would do is we're sort of part of key committees, and we'd really be feeding it and sort of saying, actually, is this still the right sort of information to be looking into that. Now, on something as big as, if you're really taking on huge volume markets, that is a lengthy game, just because it will be covered by, you just go against the volume market. But that doesn't mean that it's not possible. It's just you want to really socialize some of this. You want to bring alternative data. You need to just show how the performance is starting to give equivalent result. Again, one thing I'm a super big fan of is doing something in smaller scale, and they really wanted to that over time. Nobody that starts today can claim they're 60-year durable. There's only one material on the planet that can do that, and that's brick. Because they've been around for that amount of time. But at the end of the day, there is lots and lots of work you can do to show actually you're en route too, right? So unless I'm that old, I will be able to prove the same thing. That's just logical. But there are ways of really starting to gather information, to sort of have a different type of work. But you just have to be open to be able to gather this data and bring it forward in the way that it goes. But it's a constant way. Yourselves, you can engage yourselves actually as well. So you can take part in something. It's really hard for early stage organizations to then also tiddle along to standards committee, which tend to be quite procedural. But again, don't underestimate the power of that actually, and to bring this forward as alternative. The circular economy stuff is a very good example. Nothing much happening. Yeah, so it's really, we're all talking about it, but really to make this happen en masse, we should have, alternative performance declarations coming by now. So, again, we're really keen to sort of see how some of that stuff can start feeding in. The steel sector is really strong in that. They've got a really strong product that can show that. And again, they're sort of supplemented by other innovation, like, for example, the material ID, the passport of the particular beam in the particular location. So sometimes the innovation doesn't come from the obvious bit. The innovation comes from an enabling innovation that basically says, I can track this particular piece of structure from the moment it was installed to the moment it re-enters the cycle, and thereby I can provide its evidence. But I don't rattle the performance declaration bit because that's the same. Do you see what I mean? So some people actually sort of would do a buddy innovation to work together, which can be a really good way of getting it done.
So can I pick up on your early engagement point? Thank you very much for covering that. I think in terms of sort of, obviously the encouragement is that we can give is get involved early on. In terms of, is it do you have sort of generic advice, or do you actually get engaged on a one-to-one basis? Yeah,
BBA is actually reshaped slightly just because we want to be the certifier of the product of the future. And so really we realize that, the standard approach is a really difficult thing to get, especially when you're early on. So there are ways now that you can enter the certification process at different stages with, packages of money that you can make available for that, and sort of do some exploratory work, some initial thinking around what would be the standards that would apply in my case. So there is, we call this Pathfinder. So you would have ways of really sort of engaging early, quite good money. Like you don't have to have huge amounts, but it sort of pays the way a little bit to the next steps. And again, we've learned the hard way, when companies come along that have this huge step to climb. And actually it's surprising, when you do something you think it's just a minor innovation in your minds. But, when you see the declaration burden that you have to make, it can be surprising. So we've really tried to reshape a little bit to allow that early engagement to happen in a really cost-efficient way, but still meaningful.
A follow-up to that was so more from H1C. So I think we've been through raising ERX money, which the H1C and a simple advanced assurance, is where you say, if we do this, this, and this, then we will give you your tax relief.
Yeah,
do you go against that sort of stage where you say, we took this company and provided the actual results to the instance process, not for like the end users, not the customers, particularly for the investors. That'd be massively useful if you could say, actually, we believe this company, the curiosity goes through this particular process, and if they do all that sort of stuff, we think they're on track to get certification.
Yeah, interesting point. Yes, to some extent. The only thing is it's grades of vanilla. Do you know what I mean? I could say to you today, if you come to us and you've got a manufacturing plant, you've got a quality plan, and you've got people that are competent to run your factory, and you've passed all your tests, you're going to get a certificate. It's worth nothing. Do you know what I mean? Because you can read that on the website now. So I think there is sort of a bit in between here where I think it's very difficult to say something complies until it complies. And when you're in these early stages of changing formulation, of going back and forth, of really doing this quite messy bit, to say you're going to get to a straight line, because, by the time you get there, you might actually, I'm changing supply chain partner now. And actually, as far as the certification journey is concerned, that's a start from scratch type moment. Yeah. So all I'm saying is I think there needs to be a way that it's a meaningful statement other than a generic statement that says if you meet all of this, you've got to be certified, which is true.
Yeah,
but
it's sort of chicken and egg position.
It is a bit, yeah.
The best won't put money in until they've got sense that they'll get the tax relief.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm not a tax expert, but on the technical side, I think what is really important is the routines and the behaviors that come with a product that's ready for volume. And certification is one of these things, so that you are able to open your factory doors and if somebody audits you, that you have got constancy of your supply chain partners and understand exactly how these guys supply to you, what you're expecting to see. So these routines and behaviors that we know lead to product of constant performance is sort of stuff that, once we see that in place and we see it come together, that's when, the funnel narrows. And I think once these behaviors and your arrangements with your wider supply chain is starting to solidify, that's really, I think, where some of these, where it's a meaningful statement, right? Because you're starting to commit to a way of producing a product to a certain end outcome.
Henry, so if I have a bit of background in corporate finance, so familiar with SCAs and years. So as Julie says, you've got to be careful. We can't predict the outcome that goes through the process. But I do find the engagement with financial partners, they find it very helpful to understand the robustness of the process we go through, so that when the outcome is success, it gives them a far greater level of confidence in what has been achieved.
Yeah. Okay. I think that'd be really useful. I know that a number of companies here, maybe struggling to reach some of the institutional finance. So really encourage you to engage with the investors as well as the companies. Because that's the way we get clients and pay.
If the application is for housing, we have built very strong relationship with the likes of NHBC. I sit in the NHBC Council with Premier, and also on the infrastructure side, because National Highways is a big player, and we have very close relationship. So we're very keen to extend that to other forms of end beneficiaries or financial institutions.
Good. Do you guys offer a route to European markets?
Good question. Yes, I mean, we are basically a matching body to the European system, which, of course, post-Brexit is sort of the arrangement as it is. So at the moment, we wouldn't be necessarily, we can't issue a certificate for Europe, but the methods and the standards that we use are identical to the standards that will be used in Europe. So again, really important to communicate early on if that is the sort of path. Same with America, by the way. So there are similarities and differences there. But again, to know that this is the journey is really important because it will help in guiding a little bit the type of evidence and to what standard the evidence is gathered.
So European bodies that we can no longer be members of, we have set up stores based to the 10. So we work with Martin for this relationships.
At the moment, the standards are really harmonized still. So it's a watching brief. It's a watching brief for Britain, I think. Yeah, see what happens.
Make last.
I'm going to check. Well, yes, I'll say thank you very much for coming in. Sorry about the messes of misunderstanding on our timings. I know you're staying around for the heat awards as well, so thank you very much for that. Thank you everybody for coming along, finding the time. As I said, thank you for your questions. We're going to distribute this out. I also realised we go beyond the building sector, so we'll actually spread it a bit more widely around. And we'll take it from there. So we're really nice.
Thanks for your time. Thanks for having me.
Cheers.